In this video, I'm going to be sharing a behind-the-scenes look at how I create my own podcast. My name is Nathan Gartland, and welcome to the Physician Pharmacist YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a current anesthesiology resident and host of the Physician Pharmacist podcast. Alrighty, so in this video, we're going to break down a little bit further how I actually create my podcast, and this is definitely going to be something I think people will be interested in, especially if you're an amateur podcaster like myself, who's looking to improve their workflow or learn something new about the podcasting process. And step number one, if you're just starting out, I think the best approach is to find a topic that you are particularly interested in. So don't go to Google and find some mainstream topic if you're not really passionate about it, because podcasting is a lot of work and it requires a lot of research behind the scenes. And if it's something that you're not interested in, then it's going to be a lot harder to kind of build some momentum. And we'll start out with going over my podcast setup. And here's a quick look at all the different materials that I utilize to set up my podcast recording studio. Alrighty, so we're going to be going over my podcast equipment setup here. Draw your attention to the first item of interest, and this is professional sounding headphones. I also have a standard microphone here as well. It has a standard USB input that I plug into my laptop. I also have a Logitech camera right here, and it has this little fun customizable spot here that it allows it to sit on any particular screen. So I'll put it on top of my laptop sometimes, I'll put it on top of the big computer screen as well. Next, you'll see the backdrop, and this certainly isn't necessary, but it was something that I wanted to spice up the space a little bit with. And so the total cost of this was probably the most expensive item on my entire list, and this was about $100 for the size that I have here. Behind here, I just have a small LED light display that I can change. You might have noticed it in some of my YouTube videos, but I can adjust the color to many different things, and it has different options as well. So it's kind of a full spectrum of colors, which is helpful. Here, you'll notice this is our natural equipment. So here's increased brightness, decreased brightness, all the way down to as low as it goes, and then the warmth as well. And then over here, we have our standard ring lights that can change the colors, the strength as well. And there's so many different things you can do setting up the lighting and the positioning for appropriate podcasting. But I usually have this light set up here, and so that provides a lot of light in the front for me, and then I'll have this on the side to provide some backlighting as well. And I usually won't have this right against my face, but I'll turn it behind me so that it provides a little bit more depth. So this is my pretty simple podcast setup that I utilize for every single one of my podcasts to make the production look as high quality as possible. The next part of my workflow is finding individuals who might be interested in being on my podcast. And so this is typically through social media or LinkedIn posts or different markets where I can find individuals who are posting or creating interesting things in the healthcare space. And a lot of people are super warm to the idea of sharing a lot of this behind the scenes progress that they've made, because getting into medical school is challenging and getting through pharmacy school is challenging. And I think a lot of people want to do good and share that message with the community. So once you've identified that an individual who is willing to be on the episode, I usually use Calendly, which is a scheduling application that's completely free, and they do have a paid feature, but everything that I utilize is free on this platform here. And it's super convenient where I can share all the booking information to the individual, and it shares and syncs with my calendar so that I'm able to distribute out dates and I don't have to send individual information to every single person that I reach out to. So once I've got the individual scheduled, I will then go over to Notion, and Notion is my platform where I organize all of the information regarding all of the guests that I have on the show. And these are the different scripts, and I've made templates for each individual script and color coordinated them based off of who I've completed, who I need to complete, and kind of emerging markets for people that I'm planning on having on the podcast but aren't quite ready yet or haven't quite confirmed. And so this is another step in my workflow. And for instance, here you can see that I had Dr. Sean Anderson on the podcast, and this was episode 50 that is aired recently. And in here, I have my template of what I'm going to say in the podcast. I'll go over some background questions, and then I'll fine-tune some of this information to meet the needs of the episode itself. But a lot of it is templated, and I have a pretty good idea of what I want to ask about. And I'll use LinkedIn as the primary source to get all the personal information and the accurate information with regards to the story, and a little bit of ChatGPT on the side to help kind of sum it all up and make it nice and clean. I also use Airtable, and this kind of comes in line after the fact, and I use this to basically coordinate what tasks need to be completed after I have produced the episode itself. And you'll realize that podcasting, there is a lot of different steps along the way. And I hope that this isn't overwhelming, but this is the system that I've created that actually helps me keep track of where I'm at with different tasks, because sometimes I'll interview 5 or 6 people in a week even. And it's hard to remember how far along have I gotten? Have I written the script for them yet? Have I recorded? Have I done the editing? Have I done the marketing afterwards? And so there's a lot of different things to keep track of. So I'll have this incomplete tab here, which is super convenient. And as I click through each option, it will delete the person off of this view that I see here. It'll keep them in the main view, but this is how I kind of keep track of my workflow, so I'm not bogged down with all the other stuff that you see there. Alrighty, and so the next step in this process is actually going to the Riverside platform, and this is where I record all of my podcast episodes. And so the individuals that I linked and scheduled through Calendly will actually be linked directly to this site, and I set that up for that particular reason, so that they can just have one simple click and they can join in during the session. And so what you would normally see is myself here, but since I'm using the camera right now to record the screen, I'm not able to see myself on the visual, but also that the other guest would also be in this as well. So I didn't have any particular guest here, but I did record an example. I will preface that Riverside is not a free platform. This is a paid service and subscription, but it has cut down substantially on the amount of time that I have needed to edit podcast episodes. And so I would highly, highly recommend you start with this particular platform. But if not, if you're hoping to save a few dollars, if you're not entirely sure that you want to do this podcasting gig, there's certainly options through Zoom or other recording softwares. But you can also join Riverside, and there will be a link down below if you're curious on exploring it a little bit more. If you want me to make an additional video about the platform, I'd be happy to do that as well. So just let me know in the comments. Welcome to the Physician Pharmacist Podcast, a show designed to shed some light on a very unusual pathway into medicine. I'm your host, Nathan Gartland, and I'm a licensed pharmacist and current anesthesiology resident. I'm also the author of PharmD to MD and the owner of the Physician Pharmacist Company. So as you can see here, I actually have a pre-recorded podcast, and this is what you had seen. And so some of the cool features with Riverside is it gives me an entire transcript of everything that was said, and I can highlight different sections and delete them out, and that'll disappear from the final cut. And of course, this base file is saved, so any edits I make here can also be adjusted, and they're not permanent by any means. And so there's some really cool AI features that I certainly employ in my podcasting nowadays. Beforehand, I would physically go through and cut out all of these things. But now I can get rid of all the pauses in a few seconds here. And so it just cut out all of this information. And so what I will get when this is all finished is one very short clip of basically all the text and all the conversation that I've had. It'll impact and improve the audio, so it'll do its own adjustments there as well, which is super, super convenient. But I can also add captions, which is super nice. So here's an example right there. Great platform that I highly recommend to everyone. From what you're seeing here now, this is everything that I typically do, and then I will go and export the clip. And most podcasting could be done right now at this point in time where you could get ready to upload, but I actually add an additional step, and this is called the DaVinci Resolve step, and I'll show you that in just a second. But this is where I'm able to really fine-tune a lot of details and add some customization that I think gives the podcast an extra level of professionalism. Alrighty, so this is DaVinci Resolve, and this is a free software that's available off the internet, and I use this for every single one of my podcast videos, YouTube videos, and it can be pretty extensive and a sharp learning curve at first. So like I said, if you don't want to do this step, I would definitely recommend just using Riverside initially, and then you can kind of ease your way into this process. But this is how I like to add some of the custom features as well that makes the podcast a little more unique. And so at the bottom here is a whole bunch of different options, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed because there are a million different places to click. And so what I'm doing is I'm functioning right in this particular tab here. This is known as the Edit tab. And you'll notice that this is my timeline right here, and this is my clip that I already actually added. Right here, you can kind of move the clips around, which is pretty convenient. And this is by no means an extensive tutorial on how to utilize this. Like if I wanted to remove this little segment here, then I can use a bunch of edits and short keys to get rid of that. And now it's gone. Same thing. Let's say I want this clip right here highlighted. I can get rid of that. Let's say that I wanted to speed up what I was saying. So you can change like the clip speed. So it gives you way more functionality and way more customization. Now, generally for a podcast, you don't need to use this software. But let's say that for all extensive purposes, this is what I'm looking for my podcast episode. All I have to do is go over here and click on my little rocket symbol. And this is the final like rendering page. And so what it will do is all the edits that I've made here, it's not one cohesive clip yet. It has to basically create that one cohesive clip. And so I'll change the file location, change the name, and then I'll add it to my render queue. And once that's in the render queue, all you have to do is hit render. And that can sometimes take a little while depending on the processing power of your computer. I'm working off of a laptop that's not particularly fast, so some of my hour-long podcasts will end up rendering in about 3.5 hours. So sometimes I'll leave it on overnight. Other times I'll have like a free weekend that I know I'm going to be available at the house. Then I'll definitely set that up. That is my quick workflow of how I edit my podcasts and how I basically produce the episode. But we're not done yet, because now I have the physical file completed, but then I have to upload it and market it as well. So once you've created your podcast episode and you have your final upload that you're happy with, you can then go over to Spotify Podcasting. And this is the platform that I use to basically showcase all of the information. And I'll upload to Spotify as well as YouTube. So I'll basically take that same video that I had edited and put it right into here, as well as YouTube. And the upload times can vary depending on your internet signal, but usually it's pretty quickly. And then you can go through and add different information about the podcast and use like ChatGPT and other ways to summarize. But another cool feature of Riverside is it actually goes through the transcript and will use AI to create a lot of that information for you already. So I'll end up copying and pasting a lot of that because it cuts down on a lot of time. And then the last place that I go to is YouTube, and I'll come here and I will create and upload a video, and that video will be the podcast episode, and you can see all these different thumbnails. They don't end up making themselves, and so I'll end up using Canva. And there's a free version of Canva, but I found that it can be pretty inconvenient if you want to use some of the cooler features. So I do pay for the Canva subscription. And that really cuts down on a lot of the like red tape that you have when you're trying to use this platform. But I think it's probably the best money that I've spent, and it really helps create some beautiful thumbnails. And a lot of the designs can also be just copied from right over here and then just edited and fine-tuned to your liking. So that is a wrap on how basically I create my podcast and distribute a lot of the content, and I hope you enjoyed.